Release the Quacken!
Greetings, fellow game designers. Ron here at Lame Duck Studios. And in this tutorial, I want to go over BSPs. So what are BSPs? BSPs are Binary Space Partitions. And what they are is a simplified way of subdividing space into shapes. If we come over here under the Geometry tab, you'll see a big list of these blue objects here. And these are all BSPs, and they're BSP brushes. If I hover my mouse over, you can see it says Make, Box Brush, Cone Brush, Cylinder Brush, etc. Now, a BSP is not a static mesh. So like this object here is a static mesh. You can see static mesh. Or any object that you would make in 3ds Max or Maya or Blender. These are generated inside of the game engine. And what's really handy about these is you can very quickly rough out an environment using BSPs. So let's go ahead and drag one in. I'm going to drag in the BSP box. And you'll see that I get this little outline. This is my brush outline. And voila, here is my BSP box. Now the advantages to BSPs is that they're very quick to work with. You can shape them into anything. You can throw colors on them right away. You don't have to do any UV work, which is really nice. Downsides is they're a bit processor heavy. Now back in the day when 3D graphics were still coming up and game design was still in its infancy, BSPs were the go-to for making geometry inside of the game engine, but they were very processor heavy. Nowadays we have dedicated graphics cards where everything is kind of offloaded to the graphics card. The BSPs are still handled using the processor, so if you have a bunch of them in your level, you're actually creating extra work for your computer. But there's a way around that, which we'll get to a bit later. Another nice thing about them is they clean up really easy. So when you create multiples of these and you run a build step, anything that is not facing the camera or hidden between two objects is pretty much deleted. You don't ever get to draw that. Static meshes now work the same way. So if it's not in the face of the camera, you won't see it. It just doesn't get drawn. Now there are some rules for working with a BSP, and these are just kind of guidelines that I go by when I'm working with particularly cubes and other things. And that has to deal with sizing and orientation. So if I select my BSP and come over to the right here, we have our brush settings, and we can come down and we have our X, Y, and Z settings. You can see it's 200 units by 200 units by 200 units. 1 unit in Unreal is 1 centimeter. So 200 means that this is a 2-meter cube. So 100 centimeters is 1 meter. 200 would be 2 meters. 300 would be 3 meters, and so on. There's also a scale option. You can scale a BSP. I recommend not scaling BSPs, just because when you scale it, you're multiplying the base units. And if you're not aware of that, that can kind of mess you up a little bit. To give you an example, 200 times the scale, which is 1, gives me how much? 200, right? If I increase my scale by 2, I have essentially made this a 400 by 400 cube. Even though the units down here still say 200, because it is a multiplication of the units. If I drag in a new BSP, and I set it to 400, you'll see that these are identical in size. Go ahead and just line that up. They're identical in size, but they have a different appearance. Check this out. So whenever you scale a BSP, you actually end up scaling the texture. You see how the texture on this is stretched, whereas the texture on this is cleanly repeated? That's because on this one we scaled it. And when we scaled it, we also scaled the UVs with it. So we ended up creating some stretching, which is not very favorable. Whereas on this one, it's nice and clean. So pick your battles, but I prefer to not scale BSPs. Another thing is rotating BSPs, particularly with the cube. The cube can kind of confuse you. So if you look at the arrow right now, you can see we have the blue arrow is up, which is our Z. X is forward, that is that way. And then Y, which is the green arrow, is left and right. If I come over and I swap this little icon, so I have a cube and a globe, If I have the globe up, that means we're in world orientation. If I have the cube, we are in object orientation. And how that is different is the world position is always up in Z, forward is always X, and left and right is always Y. But the object itself can have a forward. Just like you have a front and a back. This object has a front and a back. So if I switch this to the cube, and I rotate, so bring up my rotation tool by pressing E, I'll just rotate this 90 degrees. Bring back my moving tool, W. You'll see that the front of the cube is now pointing to the left. But if I were to change our orientation option here to global or to world, you'll see that world front is still forward. See how that swaps? Now that can be confusing when you're trying to change the shape of your BSP. For example, if I were to go over to this BSP's sizing over here, and I kind of scroll down, you'll notice that whenever you deselect the BSP and then you reselect it, that you get some new options. And your brush settings have moved down. So don't worry, they're still here. They tend to move on you. So down here, if I were to take my X value, and let's just say I want to make this 500. That doesn't seem right. Which direction is X? Well, X is the red arrow, so it should have gone 500 this way. But it didn't. It gave me 500 in the Y. But I typed in the X. What's going on? Well, what's happening is our world and object orientations are different. So if I switch this back to object, you'll see that the X arrow is aligned with the object's front, not the world front. So when you're modifying BSPs, just be aware of what working mode you're in or what orientation mode you're in. Otherwise, you'll get confused on which direction you are changing. Okay? So for that reason, I tend to not rotate BSPs unless it has a noticeable front. So like a pair of stairs, for example. This I know. Whoops. This I know where the front is. So rotating this doesn't matter. I always know where front is. Right? This one, because it's a cube, front could be any one of these sides. It's not always that plane. Okay? Go ahead and get rid of those. The next thing about BSPs is they're really easy to throw materials on because the UVs are already made for us. So if I were to right-click in here and create a material, I'll just call this blue. Gonna go ahead and double-click on that. Expand my window. I'm going to take our shader node here, drag off of base color. I'm just going to make a vector parameter. So vector parameter. Go ahead and double click on that. I'll pick a color. And make sure that you drag the value up. That way you get the color in there. And then hit OK. Once this is good, hit the apply button right here. And you can save it if you like. And now if I drag this on, it drops it right on one of the BSP faces. Now, the difference between a BSP and a static mesh in this regard is each one of these panels or faces has its own, is basically its own entity. If I drag this onto the floor, it'll cover the whole floor. So if I come down here, you can see it covered the whole floor. Because this object is a static mesh, and it covered all the UVs. Whereas this object is not a static mesh, it's a BSP. And I can pick which side I want. So I could have blue on this side and red on this side. So if I duplicate this, go ahead and right-click it, duplicate. We'll make this one red. Double-click the color, choose red. Hit OK. Hit the checkbox. And now I can throw the red on here, and voila. That's kind of cool. Another really neat thing about BSPs is you can use them to create all kinds of stuff. So for example, let's say I wanted to make a door in this wall. I can drag in a new box, And you can see as I drag this in, it came in with the color that I had selected. That's another cool thing about BSPs, is they'll assume whatever color you have. So if I select blue, for example, and drag in another one, it'll come in as blue. If I click somewhere in my content browser and have no color, and I drag it in, it will not have any color. Okay? All right. That being the case, let me go ahead and move back on. So as I was saying, you can take a BSP, and if you come over to your brush settings, you have the additive option. This means it's added to the world. If you hit the drop down, go to subtractive, it is now being removed from the world. But check this out. If I move this one into that one, it cuts a hole. Now that's pretty cool. And you can use this to cut any shape with your BSP. So let me go ahead and remove that brush. I can bring in a cone, for example. I'll move that halfway through. And I'll set it to subtractive. And now I have the cone shape cut out. So really, really handy if you want to make different effects with it. Now, one thing you should probably do whenever you're having these subtractive BSP brushes, and pretty much with anything that you make, is name it. So if I select my BSP brush here, my cube, come over to the right, you can see where it says brush box 2. I can select it, and then of course change the name. So I'll call this cube box thing, right? And then the thing that I'm using to cut through it, that cone, I can name that. I'll call it cube box cutting cone. That way, if I ever lose it, I can find it here. Now, a trick to selecting it in the world, like if I click off and I can't find it, you can usually go to where the hole is and just grab the edge of the hole, and it'll find the cutout. But the best way, of course, is to name it, and you can find it there. Now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of both of these pieces. So I'm going to delete that and this one. I'm going to drag in a staircase, just to kind of show you how awesome these are. So you can bring in stairs, and you don't even have to, normally you'd make this in Maya, and you'd have to go through and make all the steps. But if we use a BSP, come down to our brush settings, we have options for stairs. You can change it to linear, you could make them, make a spiral staircase, you can make it whatever type that you like. We can also change how long the stairs are. So let's say I want them to be like 100 units long. Or if I wanted them to be 50 units high. Or let's say I wanted to have my stairs to be really wide. I can change the width of the stairs. What if I needed more steps? Like this wasn't enough steps. Well, it's easy. There's a step count right here, number of steps. Really awesome. And then, of course, we can always throw color onto it. So I can drag this blue, for example, and drop it on. Now you can see there's a downside. If I drop on the color, it only goes to one face. Well, that's not that big of a deal. I could select the color and drag in a new stairs. It has the color on it. But let's say I already have my BSP object in, and I want to change the color. That's no big deal. You can select the side that you want. You can see whenever I click on a face, it highlights it. So I'll grab this colored one, come over to the side here. I'm going to come down to where it says geometry, choose select. And we have the option, we can choose matching brush. This will grab the whole thing. If you only want to modify the material, you can choose all matching material. Or if you want to choose a particular side, like let's say we want just this side of the wall, but we don't want to get this side over here. We can choose the planar option and get just one side. So if I go to select, come down to select all coplanar surface. So coplanar, so co just means the ones that are next to it. So all coplanar surface. It'll grab this one side, and I can drop on my color. I missed. And try it again. There we go. And you can see we dropped it on there, but it is not on that side. And I can do the same thing for this side. Let's say I wanted to have this side be red. I can grab one of the sides here, select coplanar surface, and drop on the red. Ah, come on, you. So now I have a red side and a blue side. And of course, if you wanted to get the steps, you can use the same kind of feature. Now this one I can do really just by grabbing the same material. I can grab that, select, and go down to matching material, and it'll grab the matching material all the way up. If I drop this color on, it works. Now that will also grab all matching material in the world. So if I were to grab another box, for example, and I choose this and select all matching material, you can see how it grabs this object and that object as well, because they both have the same material. And if I were to throw on this red one, for example, it would change them both. So now they're all red. Pretty handy. So that is the BSP rundown in a nutshell. And the next one we're going to look at how to convert BSPs into static meshes and clean up your scene. All right, go ahead and save it right here, and I shall see you in the next one. Hey guys, we have done it. We're at 1,000 subscribers, and I have you to thank for it. Couldn't be happier. Thank you, awesome. Channel's been going on for a couple of years now, and we are at that point where we can kind of start moving forward and getting all kinds of awesome stuff, right? 1,000 subscribers is just a little bit away from 1,000,000 subscribers. All right, small milestones at a time. Yeah, it's been a big, long time coming, so thank you so much. Thank you for subscribing and, of course, staying interested and learning, and that you would come to me to learn all kinds of neat stuff. That being said, I want to do something and celebrate. So what should we do? What should we make? I'm a big fan of doing like clones of games. I have a list on my Patreon as a poll. You can kind of go there and you don't have to sign up or anything, although I'd love it if you did. But if you head over there, it's publicly available. You just go to the poll and pick the one that you want. I put about 7 or so. So yeah, so 7 of those. But I picked like a Mario 64 clone or Star Fox 64. I really wanted to make a Star Fox clone for like a long time, but Mario would be kind of cool. Always a big fan of Blood Omen Legacy of Kain. Do those. Or Soul Reaver. Big fan of Soul Reaver series. I like make Raziel and that sort of thing. FTL, why not? Because FTL is kind of neat. Wanted to have something that was different, right? Always a fan of Metroidvanias, so we could do like a Super Metroid kind of setup or a Mortal Kombat kind of setup, so a fighting game. Now I say clones, but they're really going to be, because of copyright, we couldn't, do Mario 64 outright, right? We couldn't make Mario and we couldn't do everything, but we can certainly make it Mario 64-esque, right? So we'll make a Mario-looking kind of character and dress him up appropriately, and then kind of make the hub world and that sort of thing. I'm going to keep these kind of in scope so that we're not going too far out, because of course time management's a thing. I teach full time. I also do this and whatever not. So got to keep it within reason. But I would definitely be, for like the Mario 64 thing, I would make the character and some of the pieces for the hub world, and of course the bomb level, and kind of get that set up and kind of run through and see how that works. So this would be like a knockoff of that. Same thing with like Star Fox. We would do like the main overworld view and the map, and getting into there. Blood Omen, I would probably do the opening sanctuary crypt and then the cemetery when you first get out. Soul Reaver, probably do the underworld all the way to the first exit. So when you get the first soul and you exit and you transition into the living world. I think the transition from living to dark world would be kind of cool. See how that is done. Plus, it would give me a chance to explore doing that inside of Unreal Engine. They initially did this. I don't think they used Unreal for this. They used. Fun fact is they actually used Unreal for Blood Omen. And then Crystal Dynamics didn't pay their royalty fees, and they went under. So make sure you pay your royalty fees. FTL, I would probably do that in Game Maker. It's just a 2D game. Metroidvania kind of deal. You can do that in pretty much anything. We could do it in Unreal, or we could do it in Game Maker, or whichever. I'll let you guys pick what engine you want to do it in. I think for some things it's easier to do it in Game Maker, and in other aspects it would be easier to do it in Unreal. So you just kind of pick your battles there. And then for a fighting game, I I would do like a Mortal Kombat style kind of clone. 2 fighters, kind of keep it simple. 1 arena, because setting up the animations is going to be what takes the most time. And keep it simple. Just kind of have like a roadmap of success of how to get that done. So any one of these I think would be great. You can always leave a comment if you think you have a better idea. But definitely go over here, and if this is something you would like to do or like to see me make as sort of the 1,000 subscriber reward, because we've hit it, definitely go over here and check it. And yeah, you'll see the link in the description. And once again, thank you guys for supporting the channel, and I will see you next time.